Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for being here as always, and today we're going to be reviewing the brand new, week and a half, 2 weeks old, whatever it is, book called Most Wanted, a tie-in novel for Solo, a Star Wars story, and a prequel to aforementioned movie. First off, I wanted to apologize to you guys. This is not going to be the normal talking head video. Mainly because, well, I have a cold sore the size of Texas, and I doubt you guys want to see that. So, without further ado, let's get into Most Wanted. Now, this isn't going to be a spoiler review per se, and that leads me into the only downside with this book, at least in my opinion. You guys know I like to start off on my negatives of any new Star Wars thing, because I like to end on the higher notes. And that is that it's kind of hard for me to really spoil this novel. It does have a very predictable story, which isn't necessarily Ray Carson's fault. That has to do with the interconnectivity and synergy and whatever other strategies that the story group has over at Lucasfilm. Now, with that being said, I do think that this book would have done a lot better had it been released, say, February or so, just before we got any teaser trailers, simply because you kind of know where the story's going to end up going, even if the only thing you've seen from Solo is any of the trailers, really. There is a specific character that shows up very early and assists Qi'ra and Han through their misadventures on and off of Corellia. Well, kind of off of Corellia, within the same system, but anyways. And you kind of know what's going to happen to that character, considering, you don't see a Rodian running around. So, yeah, I think that that's really the only downside to this book. I absolutely loved this book. It's a very quick read. I was able to burn through it in about 4 hours. I'm a relatively fast reader, though, and I believe the audiobook is somewhere between 7 and 8 hours long at normal speed. So it's a good length for what it is, which is a young adult novel. I loved this book, with the exception of its predictable story. And I've got 3 main points that I wanted to touch on. First of which is Ray Carson as an author. At least in my opinion, she is right up there with Claudia Gray in terms of the caliber of author in this new canon of Star Wars. Ray Carson's written 2 other things in this new canon that I know of. Number 1 is The Red One, which was one of the short stories in the From a Certain Point of View anthology collection. That was released last year for the 40th anniversary of Star Wars A New Hope. And The Red One was right up there with my favorite ones from that novel. There's 40 short stories, and I would say that The Red One is tied for first, along with probably 2 or 3 other ones. The Red One was the story about R5-D4, and man, I did not think that a droid story was ever going to get my tear ducts working, but Ray Carson managed to do it, man. And then the other bit that she wrote was for the Canto Bight collection of short stories, in which she wrote Hear Nothing, See Nothing, and Say Nothing. A story that I also quite enjoyed, and I'm really hoping that Most Wanted does well enough that Ray Carson gets more deals with Lucasfilm, because she does have at least in my opinion, a good grasp on the pulse of Star Wars. She's very, very capable in the way that she conveys the core themes of Star Wars. Things like self-sacrifice in The Red One. And here in Most Wanted, she kind of combines a couple of other different themes in there too. Here in Most Wanted, you once again see the theme of finding your place in all of this, finding your own destiny, as well as the theme of, I know it's an overused term, but the best way I can describe it is good, clean fun. And that is that sense that you get from films like The Goonies, almost. Most Wanted definitely has this tone to it. Obviously, it's a young adult novel, but it has this tone to it in which it feels like kids ending up in a whole lot of trouble, and they end up having to work their way out of it. And at least to me, that's a major theme of Star Wars going all the way back to A New Hope. And one last bit about Rae Carson as an author. I am very picky about my dialogue in book form, in novel form. It's easy for me to feel like dialogue can be unnatural in book form for whatever reason. Despite the fact that I'm a very avid reader, it is very easy for me to kind of go, well, that doesn't sound like two humans talking to one another, or two, sentient beings talking to one another in the case of a Star Wars novel. But Rae Carson, at least to me, handles her conversations in this very natural tone. You can really hear Han's voice and Qi'ra's voice while you're reading it. You can almost hear the inflections of those characters. And that leads me to the next point that I wanted to touch on, and that is the story of Qi'ra and Han. This entire book is pretty much, at least the best of my knowledge, taking place just before that very long prologue scene in Solo. And at least in my opinion, the dialogue in between Han and Qi'ra is just as good as the dialogue that we got in Solo: Star Wars Story, something that I really, really enjoyed in the movie. And then the last point that I just wanted to touch on is the Han and Rey parallels that I believe a lot of people have already kind of caught on to from Solo, but Most Wanted really drives that home. You get a real visceral sense of the actual hell that is Corellia in the interim in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope and the original trilogy and at large. You get the sense of exactly how terrible Corellia is. And yet again, it just drives home that sense of that's why Han is so caring for Rey in The Force Awakens, because they're both people that just want to get off of their planet, but then as soon as they get off their planet, all they want to do is go back home to their planet. But Most Wanted really drives home and really expounds on exactly how hard life is. I kind of compare this Most Wanted novel to the sequence, that 5-minute sequence at the beginning of The Force Awakens when we see Rey going about her normal day, with the added bonus of things like Qi'ra and Han building a relationship with one another, learning about one another, and learning how to respect one another, because at the beginning of this novel, they don't like each other, really, at all. And at the end of this very Goonies-like adventure, Han and Qi'ra end up being even more than just allies. Overall, I cannot recommend Most Wanted enough. It is a good, clean, fun young adult novel. Because it's a young adult novel, it's much cheaper than your normal quote-unquote adult novels, things like Bloodline and Thrawn and all that kind of stuff. As of right now, Most Wanted is sitting at about $10 on Amazon, and at that price, I'd pick it up. It's worth it. At very least, it's going to give you a more enriched experience of Solo: A Star Wars Story the next time that you go see it in the theater, or when you get it on Blu-ray in a couple of months. And at least to me, I'm certain that I'm going to have a more enriched experience once I go back and watch A New Hope or The Force Awakens, and I see Han's empathy towards the character of Luke, and especially the character of Rey. So, Most Wanted. If you guys have already read it, let me know what you guys thought about it down in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like on it. It lets me know that I'm doing something right around here. And hit that subscribe button if you're new here and you enjoyed this video. You can check out the list of the other videos. I've got almost 100 videos now on this channel, which is crazy, especially considering I only started it a little over a year ago. So, thank you guys as always, and as always, may the Force be with you. Take care.